Our first speaker today is going to be Jurgen Appelo. He is the CEO at Happy Mellow, and he is going to be talking to us about how to fix your, failed Agile transactions. Everyone, please welcome Jurgen to the stage.
Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here. Seriously, this is the most fascinating opening of any conference I have ever attended. For two reasons. First of all, I've never seen organizers being so vulnerable and open on stage at the start of a conference. That was very inspiring. And second, I never won something at the beginning. Woo! I can pick a book. I hope they have my book. Just kidding. So, whoops, I'll try to shout a little less loudly. I have something up my sleeve for you. I was running this morning. Yes, that's me. 5 kilometers. I feel very much awake at this point. And but that's not about me. This is my real opening slide. The books that some of you might have seen before, mentioned 3 that sort of made me famous and infamous in the Agile community. The role of the leader in the Agile world, Agile organizations. The second one, How to Change the World, is free. You can get it by just going to my website, subscribing to my newsletter, downloading the book, and then unsubscribing. It's easy, okay? Anyone can do that. It's very simple. And the last one on this slide, Managing for Happiness, about happier workplaces. But this is not about these books either. I want to talk about this picture. The amount of change in the music industry. I am so old that I remember what happened over there at the beginning, the 80s. That's my favorite era of music. With my Sony Walkman on the side. 13 songs on each side, and you had to take the cassette out. Oops, the tape got stuck. Use your pinky finger to get it back in. Maybe some of you remember that. And then CDs became big. I am a little bit proud of that because I'm from the Netherlands and Philips played a big role there in that technology. But then at some point in 1999, something happened. Does anyone remember what happened in 1999? Napster happened, yeah. Or more broadly speaking, illegal downloads of MP3s happened. Well, some experts say that the illegal downloads was by people who didn't buy CDs anyway, so there was no difference. But, well, you can see from the statistics of the revenues, things started collapsing right that moment. What a coincidence. So something was going on. And then a bit later, we got legal downloads, iTunes, and streaming, Spotify, Deezer, Pandora, all those platforms. So much change in the last couple of years. Well, there was not much change over there. For decades, we used vinyl for bringing music to other people. And that worries some CEOs and leaders and managers, of course. You see the adoption rates of new technologies keep increasing. It took decades for telephone and TV to be introduced, and now new technologies are introduced in a few months, and then many people are using them. And this idea of new technologies and new companies replacing existing ones that leads me to discuss the innovators' dilemma, which is a concept popularized by Clayton Christensen, who sadly died a few weeks ago. One of the most famous gurus in the industry, I think. And he said, in many industries, the same thing happens again and again. You have the leaders, the incumbents in their industry, Sony, Universal, Warner, but then you have the disruptors as well, who start with products that are of lower quality, like downloading music from the internet that was low bit rate, and you had to wait for an hour to finish the download, and then it was the Portuguese version. Oh my God, had to start all over. But it was fun. It was something that the younger generations craved, a new way of consuming music. And then the quality started increasing of online music. And then the disruptors replaced the existing leaders, basically. So the innovator's dilemma is, how can we be both? How can we be the leaders in an industry and the disruptors at the same time? Because we don't want to be replaced, but we do understand we need to innovate. How can we execute our current business models, which means we need optimization, we need specialization, we need centralization. All of that is useful because we have to drive for profits. At the same time, we need to explore. We need a bit of chaos. We need a bit of experimentation. We want it both. We want, as the British say, we want our cake and eat it at the same time. We want to be in the European Union and out of it at the same time. It's a very British thing, to want it both. So that's the innovator's dilemma. How can we have a startup culture, but at the same time, we don't want to lose our scale-up culture. We want both, actually. And some people try. I have heard people talking about innovation committees. I was part of an innovation committee once. I was CIO of a company in Rotterdam, my hometown. There was a CTO, there was a marketing manager, and we were a committee of 3 or 4 people. And there was an idea box. And people submitted ideas to the idea box. And then once per month, we got the idea box and we emptied the box. And there were 3 sticky notes or whatever in there. And we looked at the first idea and we said, that didn't make any sense. Next idea. That makes a lot of sense and cost €1 billion. We're not going to do that, sorry. Next one, we threw that away as well. And then, oops, the box was empty. And then the employees were angry. You're rejecting all our ideas. And we said, you should submit better ideas. This is all crap. That didn't work. That led to some tension in the company. Some people have innovation centers or some companies. This was actually suggested by Clayton Christensen, who said the best way of doing innovation is to create some kind of innovation center and put it far away from the head office. Not in the same building, not even in the same city, maybe in different countries, somewhere far away. So the main business cannot kill it. Otherwise, the immune system of corporate culture is going to kill every new initiative. So put it somewhere else. And that seems to work sometimes, but most of the time you hear the corporate office complaining about that fancy-looking office over there with their colorful walls and yoga mats and pillows, and there's nothing ever coming out of that innovation center, and we're paying for everything over there. So that leads to tension as well. And then some organizations have hackathons or innovation days or exploration days. An interesting concept. And there are some successes from hackathons, but quite a lot of times I hear people complaining that after the hackathon, nothing happens. Jurgen, we were very active and creative and innovative for 24 hours, and there were pizza everywhere, up to the walls. But after that, it was back to business as usual, and nothing happened with the ideas. Well, that's a shame. That's a 24 hours engagement exercise, but it has nothing to do with innovation then, basically, because if there are no results. And some try to contribute with frameworks and methods. Maybe you have seen some of these pictures before. Holacracy or Spotify model or scaled agile framework or whatnot. I'm not going to discuss any of them. They're full of good practices that they borrowed from many different places. I see them as toolboxes, useful toolboxes. And I created a tag cloud of all those frameworks and methods and everything. Lots of stuff that Agile and Lean is about. You can download it later. I'll give you the URL for that tag cloud. This is everything that Lean and Agile is, basically. But none of that solves the innovator's dilemma. Not a single framework or method helps you solve it. But I'm going to solve it this morning. Yep, I'm going to solve it this morning. In the next, 41 minutes, I'm going to solve the innovator's dilemma with you. Here we go. Let's look at some of the disruptive companies that we have in Europe, because we can be pretty proud of what we have in Europe. You always hear stories about Silicon Valley and the amazing companies they have there. Like, I heard the startup story of Airbnb like 17 times already. But in Europe, we have Booking.com, and Booking is 5 times bigger than Airbnb. And they're Dutch, so there you go, all right? Very proud of that. And we have Spotify and TransferWise and lots of cool companies. And I visited them and talked with Agile coaches and HR people and CIOs. And one thing I noticed is nobody talks much about Agile or Lean. That's sort of default. That's total common sense. But what I did pick up was they talk about the typical lifecycle stage of innovative ideas. There's a product life cycle, and all those businesses know where they are in those life cycle stages. I will show you. It usually starts with one person having an idea.
iPod, 1,000 songs in your pocket.
You remember that? 1,000 songs in your pocket? I had just 25 songs in my pocket back then. So 1,000 songs was like, whoa, that was a lot. And nowadays, we have 1 billion songs in our pocket. And my daughter is like, Spotify doesn't have my favorite album. Spotify sucks. And I'm like, you spoiled little brat. Okay. Apparently, requirements have evolved over time. So someone has an idea. That's stage one, the under-the-shower moment or whatever of a founder or someone working at a company and saying, this would be a great thing to do. Then stage two is, I call it expedition, is figuring out if that idea is making sense. In the startup world, they call that problem-solution fit. Is the solution that I have in mind really solving somebody's problem? You would be amazed at how many innovators skip this step. I think this has been the main problem in the entire blockchain cryptocurrency world out there, where you had technical people falling in love with the technology, and they started coding right away, imagining all the problems they would be solving with blockchain and crypto coins. And the only ones interested in their projects were the cryptocurrency speculators and nobody else. So that was a bit of an issue, I think. So what can you do in stage two is you test, you validate if your idea is making sense before investing any money in it. You invest the least amount to validate that somebody wants your product. We call it minimal viable product fit of the low fidelity type. You're just faking it, basically. So for example, you want to open a coffee shop somewhere in a certain street. It doesn't make sense to just rent a space right away because you don't know if that's the right place to open the coffee bar. You should run a test. You could do a lean experiment, as we call it. So one lean experiment could be, the best location for a new coffee bar, that's my learning goal. As an assumption, I have that the best place is in side street. But I'm not sure. So as a test, I could sell coffee from a mobile coffee cart for a day. And when I sell fewer than 50 coffees on one day, I consider the test failed. Then there apparently is not enough throughput, not enough demand in that place. And I could go somewhere else and do the test again. I've lived in Brussels for 10 years. I know somebody actually doing this test with a mobile cart, and they were in various places in the city to see where they sold the most coffee. And then they ended up in a sweet spot between a student campus and a metro station. That was the best place to be, they found. So that's a great test to run before you invest in a coffee shop. So that's stage two. Now, suppose you validated problem-solution fit, you have the green light from potential customers. Now it's time to invest. You form a team, you need money, you go to angel investors and get seed capital when you're an external startup, or when you're an internal startup, you go to management, you ask for a budget, and you show them the evidence of problem-solution fit to solidify your case. And we sometimes call it vision founders fit. Do we have the right founders to complete, to enable this vision? And you could start playing with a lean canvas, for example, from this stage on. It's an adaptation of the business model canvas. We'll see in a moment. The lean canvas is specifically for startups. It says you should test your problem, you should test the solution, you should test your unique value proposition. For me, those canvases are just boxes full of tests that you should run as an innovator, as a leader of a small product team. And then one of the most difficult stages is stage 4. It is called product market fit, a very famous term in the startup scene. Can you now make a product that people actually want to use? I know from personal experience that it is relatively easy to get a false positive in the early stage, where people say, oh, I love your idea, I'm signing up right now, you make that product and I'm going to buy it. And then when you make a product, they're like, They suddenly have more important things to do. So annoying. So making something that people actually want to use is extremely difficult. And then again, you have minimal viable products here, but of the high fidelity type. You actually have a product, but as simple as possible, and you try to sell it. You try to actually use it, or have customers use that product. And oh, by the way, and this is one of the first picture I could find of the iPod of Steve Jobs. Of course, they did all the testing internally. Steve Jobs was the proxy for the market because he was one of the rare people in the world who actually knew what customers needed. So he did the testing with the products. And I heard one story where the product team came with the next version of the iPod to Steve, and he said, no, it's still too big. And they were like, no, this is as thin as we can make it, because they knew how important it was for him to have things small and thin. So no, this is as small as we can make it. He said, I don't believe it. No, truly. Well, he said, let's see. So he took the prototype and walked to an aquarium, and then he dropped the prototype in the aquarium. And then bubbles came out. He said, look, there's air in there. Get it out. Super, that's a fascinating test. Just throw your MVP in the water. Let's see if bubbles come out. and now there are air pods. Isn't that amazing? Everything comes full circle at Apple. Anyways, so that's the minimal viable product in stage 4. Very hard to get customers to actually use your product. But suppose that works. Suppose you're able to do this, to pull this off. You now have something that people love. They enjoy using it. They want more. They recommend it to their friends. Are you now ready to scale up? No. One of the most dangerous things I have learned in all my conversations and reading is scaling up too soon. Many startups die because they're not ready for that next stage. There's a stage in between that's stabilizing everything. If you did everything well, you faked all you have in the back office because you only focused on the customer. Can we get the customers to use a product? The back end is a nightmare. You have technical debt going through the roof. Nothing is integrated. Everything is done manually. The team is going nuts with all the things that have to be done manually in the back end. Doesn't matter. You're just testing if customers want to use the product. Now is the time to fix the rest of the company. Right? Now, before you try to take off with the plane that is half finished, basically. So we can call this business market fit. Is your entire business now ready to conquer the market? Probably not. And there's another thing that many founders don't realize is in those early stages, you work with the innovators and early adopters among customers. They like new ideas. They like new products. They don't mind if there are a couple of bugs in there. In fact, some of them are proud when they're the first ones to find a bug. Then they're like, whoa, I found this. When you push this button that way, then this happens. That's so amazing. It's total crap, and I'm going to report it. And then I'm like, I earned a badge for being the first one to find it. But then when you move to the next group of customers, there's the early majority. They don't want to see bugs in a product that they think should be finished. When they find a bug, they don't report it to you. They report it to all their friends on Facebook and Insta. I am usually in that group. Never an innovator, always early majority. Yeah. So fix your customer service, fix your quality control, etc. That can easily take another 3 years, one of the investors told me, just to be ready to scale up. And you can discuss the business model canvas, which is the more adult version of the lean canvas, you could say, because now you have other boxes, such as key partnerships. Who wants to partner with you? In the early stage, when you have a product that is unproven, it makes no sense to discuss partnerships, because who is interested in partnering with you as long as your product doesn't work, right? So it makes sense to ignore that. But from now on, you can discuss that box and run tests again. And then acceleration, the next stage. Now you're growing up. By the way, the pictures that you see are of my mother growing up. She's very proud to be in my presentation. She spent a whole weekend going through all her photo albums, finding the best photos of each of her life cycle stages. So she's always watching with us. And you can see from the look in her eyes, as a teenager, she discovered new possibilities. Things she never knew about as a kid. Don't we all remember that phase? So yeah, it's the same for a product or a service or a business model growing up. Now everything changes. Now you become an adult, basically. And I learned, for example, that from this point, growth hacking makes a lot of sense. I spent money sending my team to a growth hacking course, and that was a complete waste of time in hindsight, because we were in stage 4, product market fit. And growth hacking is about endlessly tweaking all the messages, the buttons, the colors, the features to optimize conversion rates. Basically, it is trying to multiply something by 1,000. But if you're still in product market fit, you have something that doesn't work yet. Multiplying 0 by 1,000 makes no sense. You still have nothing, right? So that was one of my learning moments. We did growth hacking too early. And I have some other examples of things done in wrong stages. So stage 7 is crystallization. Now you rule, basically. You're the leader in the market. This is the first stage where you have to be profitable. Tesla has just moved on to stage 7. Spotify just moved on to stage 7. They're now profitable since 2 or 3 quarters. Stage 8 is expansion. Midlife crisis, when you dress in colorful clothes. Trying to stay hip and trendy and young. When a product appears in 17 different colors, you know the end is in sight, basically. They ran out of ideas. What else can we do with our products? We want to stay young. Let's make a pink version. Why not the entire rainbow? Great idea. That's midlife crisis of a product, basically. And then stage 9, conservation. Everything is downhill now. It's not working well. People are moving away. The product is slow, but you keep it around. You don't want to kill it yet. You just keep it around. Maybe it's just costing you money in this stage. And then stage 10 is, okay, let's just admit it's over. We finish it. We wrap it up. We make it a project and done. No more customer service. And that is a typical life cycle of any product or service, any business model. Sometimes it takes a few years, like I was at Rovio in Helsinki, the makers of Angry Birds. It takes just a few years for a game to go through all these stages. But then in another industry, the insurance industry perhaps, it could take 100 years for a new product to be developed and grow up and die. But it's always the same thing. In the beginning you explore and you try to figure out what is the right thing to do. And then steadily over your life cycle stages, you switch to execution, and then you do that thing right with good quality, fast, good profits, low costs, exactly. The same curve again and again. And this is the curve of the iPod. You can see here. Product market fit stage was around here. Stage 5, stabilization. 6, scaling up. Stage 7, yay, we're profitable and making lots of money. Stage 8, oh my God, what are we going to do? Let's make a pink version. And then 9, 10, dead. Anyone still has an iPod here in the audience? Over there, the last one in Hungary. Woo! Awesome. Keep it. It's a lot of money now, probably. So what I learned, as I said just earlier, different rules apply to different life cycle stages. That's important. Here's a picture of us when we were young, my family and I. Look at the fancy pants that I wore when I was 9 years old. Yeah, I started the whole trend in the world with these kinds of pants. This is my little brother. You can see from the look in his eyes, he was planning something devious again. He was always like that, my little brother, always mischief that he was into. And I remember he complained to my mother that he thought it was unfair that I was allowed to come home anytime I wanted, but he had to be home at 6. And it was not fair. He said to Mom, it's not fair. Jurgen can come home at 11, but I have to be at home at 6. So unfair. Well, first of all, my mother said to him, Jurgen is 3 years older. He's in a different life cycle stage, almost a teenager. You're not. Different rules. All parents understand this concept. And then second, maybe you can get the same rules as he has if at least for a year I don't have to pick you up from the police station anymore. Oh, my little brother. Oh, we have stories. He's all good now. He's all fine. That's why I can share these stories. I love my brother. But wow, we have such amazing family story. An example. Objectives and key results, all the rage in the Agile world. I see them mentioned everywhere at every Agile conference, basically, or leadership and management conference. I'm not going to explain what the objectives and key results are. They emerged at Intel, were used at Google, and then since then popularized. Fascinating goal-setting framework. You should look it up. One thing that I find interesting in my conversations with the startups and scale-ups and around Europe, I never heard anyone talk about OKRs. Not a single time. Everyone was talking about the North Star metric. The North Star metric is the one metric that rules them all. What is the one thing that our self-organizing team should optimize in product market fit stage or in stabilization stage? And the rest is all secondary. Maybe also important, but one thing should rule them all. It could be we focus on monthly recurring revenue. It could be we focus on total order size per customer. It doesn't matter. Pick one thing. The benefit of that is it keeps it super simple, laser focused for a team. There are, of course, side effects, of course. You might forget about other things that are important as well, so you need a bit of a balance. But then I thought, if startups always talk about the North Star metric, or the one metric that matters, as Ash Moria calls them, maybe we can do both. Maybe it makes sense that the young ones do North Star metric when they're still growing up. They need something simple that works for them, that's easy to learn, so they have laser focus. But once they grow up, as a family, as a company, we're going to expect them to implement OKRs, because that's what the adults do. It takes more time, it is more complicated, it takes more iterations to learn, but it's much more advanced. Why should we have one rule for the entire company? That makes no sense. It's as if everyone in the whole family has the same bedtime hours. That's ridiculous, right? The kids are not the same as the grandparents. The teenagers are not the same as the young adults. We need different rules for different products and services depending on where they are. So don't treat everyone the same with one big framework or method. It should depend. Different ages need different practices. So that's the first key to solving the innovator's dilemma. It is making sure that your practices depend on the business life cycle stage, on the maturity of your idea, not the maturity of the team. That's something completely different, okay? You could have a highly mature team working on a very immature product idea. That's the best combination I can think of. Yeah. You could also have a very immature team working on a mature product. I'm sure many coaches in the room know lots of those teams. So, business model maturity, that you need to account for when you advise practices. It depends on how old the idea is, basically. Okay, second key that we're going to discuss. Maybe some of you know this picture, design thinking picture from IDEO and the design school, Stanford Design School, D-School in the US. Very popular picture, you see it everywhere. There's another design thinking picture that is popularized in the UK from the Design Council. Looks different, but they mean the same thing, basically. It starts by empathizing with your customers, and then there are a number of other things to do until you have a product release. I love all the design thinking stuff. I love talking with design thinkers, and I read the books and everything. There's just one thing that annoys me, and that's this picture. Does anyone know why I am annoyed by this picture? Can you guess? Sorry? Test is too late. Yeah, more generic. No loop. Right, where's the loop? Where's the iteration? Where's the circle? Where's the iterative aspect? Design thinkers talk about it all the time. If you talk with real design thinkers, they say it is circular, it is iterative, incremental. We do everything basically all the time. But then somebody tried to turn that into a picture, and they made it something that looks suspiciously like a waterfall project. Like, okay, let's do empathizing in March, and then we can do defining early April, hopefully end with ideation before May, and then we can prototype in June and test before the summer. We have waterfall again, right? Thanks to misunderstanding of what design thinking should be. It should be iterative. Same with this picture. I like this one by the Lean Startup. It has a circle. Woohoo! What an innovative idea. It goes round in circles. But there's something missing here, in my opinion. Anyone care to guess? Build, measure, learn. What is missing? Think? Yeah? Sorry? I didn't hear it. Yeah. Well, what I find missing here is the whole empathizing part. Where's the customer? Where do the ideas come from? Build what? Do the ideas come falling out of the sky? So what I do, and that is what I am famous for, I sort of merge ideas from different sources, like my mojito method, basically use ingredients that already exist and then mix them up a little bit, and then I have something that's better. So, because we have the design thinking models here, they use different words, but they mean the same thing. Lean Startup over here. What I appreciate of Lean Startup is they make a distinctive mention of learn. We learn from our tests, or we learn from our measurement. That makes sense. I appreciate that specific reminder that design thinking models don't have. They mean it, it's in the books, but they don't have it as a step. And all of them are missing something that design thinkers call framing, or that I call contextualize. Empathize with whom? There are nearly 8 billion people on the planet. I cannot empathize with everyone. I have difficulty empathizing with just my partner, let alone the rest of the world. Yeah. So we need to narrow our scope. We need to focus on something, say, well, this is what I want to empathize with, and the rest of the universe I leave to other people. I can only solve one problem at a time. So I made it into a circle. I made it colorful because I'm in midlife crisis, so I have to use lots of colors. And I looked for an alternative of the word circle, and then the dictionary gave me vortex, and I thought, yeah, I like the word vortex. It sounds dynamic, it sounds powerful, it sounds less boring. There are no individual discrete steps. No, it's a big mess of stuff that happens during the work. There's no logical order of anything. It's just everything is swirling into each other. That's how innovation is. It's a messy, non-linear process, basically, as long as you cover the entire vortex. I'll give some examples. You do hackathons, good for you, but ethnographic research is better, okay? That means going out, getting out of the building, as the Lean Startuppers say. Get out of the office, go to where people are using your product, and just watch them. Don't ask what they want, because they don't know. They don't even realize what their needs are. Just observe, make notes, use cameras and whatever, and then discuss all that when you get back. That's ethnographic research, the researcher becoming part of the environment that they research. That's the best indicator of innovation if you do that. Second, come back with and create empathy maps. This is a picture that I took of my team a couple of months ago. We had lots of input from customer interviews, but also from observations, and we just threw it all at a wall and then try to empathize with our intended audience. What is it that they see? What is it that they feel? What is it that they talk about? Really understand the position that they were in order to uncover the problems and the needs that they were facing. And once you've done that, you could create a lean persona. You turn all those insights into a description of the archetypical user, the typical customer. The customer doesn't really exist, but you create sort of a story around that person. For example, our typical user would be Mark, 34 years old, lives in Amsterdam, loves specialty stores and loves coffee, but he cannot find coffee on the way to work. Most coffee is bad. So we now have a picture of a person that has a problem and that we could create a solution for. And it turns out when you create such a lean persona, a story, it is much easier for product teams to relate to a lean persona, to a prototype story, than to statistical information about target audiences. That's not very, very useful. And then try to narrow it down to the one job to be done. What is the job to be done for Mark? That is often not what people say that they think their job is. For example, if you ask me what I like, I'm often talking about coffee. Maybe some of you noticed on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And when you ask me what I want the best coffee. I just want the best coffee in Budapest or wherever I am. But if you look what I'm actually doing, you might see me walk into a Starbucks instead of a highly rated barista shop or whatever next to it. Why? Because at Starbucks I can sit. At Starbucks, they have Wi-Fi. At Starbucks, I'm not being chased away for sitting there with my computer for 2 hours. And some of the barista joints don't want that because they have only a few seats or something. So I prefer the coffee, but the entire job to be done is coffee plus Wi-Fi plus a comfortable place to do my work for 2 hours. That is the entire job. And that is what you maybe only know when you observe somebody's behavior instead of just asking what they want, because they don't realize that themselves. So, where does all that sit in the vortex? Well, all of that is on this side, of course. Framing, discovering, defining, ideating, coming up with ideas, all of that on that side of the vortex. I have another example. This is journey mapping. I did that with my team a while ago as well. You now turn your ideas about your products and the experiences that people have with your product into a picture. Do people have the experiences that I want them to have? Do they have wow moments or do they have what the moments? We want to know. We only know when we observe them, when we have cameras or we browse through the logs of customer service or whatever. We need to understand what is really happening. What are the moments of truth, as they call that in service design. I'll give you an example. As you may have noticed, I like coffee. So, in any strange city, as I did yesterday night here in Budapest, I open up Google Maps, I type coffee, open now, sort by distance, highest rated, and then I walk to the nearest one that mentions barista self-ground coffee or that has super fancy pictures of latte art or whatever. All right, that's where I go. I walk. Yesterday it was just 2 minutes, but sometimes it can take 20 or 25 minutes. Nice walk in the city center. I come to the coffee bar. There's no coffee bar. What the... Somebody did not take care of their address details on Google Maps. How hard can it be? That's the first what the F moment. Sorry, you lost me as a customer because I have no idea where you are. I'll go to the second one. I walk, closed for the holidays. Okay, next one, Starbucks. Anything is fine, just give me coffee. I really want my coffee now. So I go there, 5 minutes. I'm at a fancy place. Nice espresso machine, comfortable chairs. I see people working there with computers. Oh, this looks like heaven. This looks like my kind of place. They seem to have Wi-Fi and everything. So I order my cafe latte, and I get a latte fucking macchiato. What the... Okay, so here's a very important moment in the presentation, okay? Education. There we go. On that side, we have the latte macchiato. Okay? It is an Italian invention. It is invented by Italians. They call it stained milk, the latte macchiato. That is the stain that the espresso makes when you throw it in after the milk, right? The milk comes in a glass, usually, and this is how Italians teach babies how to drink coffee, basically. Over there, we have the cafe latte. It is an American invention, because the Americans were used to drinking brown water. And then when the espressos and cappuccinos were introduced, the Americans said, oh, that's strong stuff. So they made the cups bigger, they threw in more milk, and then you have the milkier coffee, the cafe latte, which is how Italians taught Americans how to drink coffee. The problem is the cafe latte now got introduced to Europe, the latte macchiato is moving up north, and it is a big mess in the entire continent. I had the same problem in Budapest yesterday night. I kid you not. I got a latte macchiato. I ordered a cafe latte. So sometimes I'd say to the barista, that's a latte macchiato. That's not a cafe latte. And then the barista says, that's the same thing. And then I tell the barista, well, if that's the same thing, then the barista is the same thing as a plumber, okay? You obviously don't care about the order of the fluids, which is rather relevant to me. So, lesson learned, coffee with milk is not milk with coffee, okay? Let that be your takeaway. Thank you so much. So where does this is understanding this journey mapping, right? Understanding the wow moments and what the F moments. You can turn it into a wow moment by really understanding what a cafe latte is and creating latte art. That's Instagrammable latte art. That's an opportunity for a wow moment. Teach your barista how to make latte art. So all of that sits here, sensitizing and systematizing, testing and learning from what happens with your product. I created a self-assessment exercise with the innovation vortex. It's a funny exercise where you can use in a retrospective just to test how innovative you are. Do we have practices that cover the entire vortex? Are we doing all of it, basically? I'll give you the URL at the end so you can download it. So what we have over here is exploration, disruptive innovation. Over there we have execution, then the innovation becomes more sustaining. But there's always innovation. The vortex should be rotating always, from the very first beginning to the very end, because there's always ways you can innovate. Only the nature of the innovation changes. In the beginning you're innovating entire products, and in the end you're innovating with small feature upgrades or whatever. But it still means you have to do everything, empathizing and systematizing and contextualizing. The entire vortex always applies. Just here's a couple of people, maybe one self-organizing team. Over here it could be 200 people involved in the entire vortex. But you're still innovating, no matter where you are. You're always learning how to improve. So the second key to solving the innovator's dilemma is to gradually shift in the kind of innovation from being disruptive to being sustaining. All right, last 5 minutes. I told you about the innovation committee. The problem was that I was trying to predict, together with my colleagues, which of the ideas in the idea box would be the winning idea. Impossible. You cannot do that. I have a nice explanation by Robert Cooper, the inventor of the stage gate model. He explains it like this.
The first thing to remember is it's a bit like playing poker. When you sit down at the poker table and you start betting, you don't put all your money on the table. You put maybe $2 or €2, and you get a few cards. And then you bet a little bit more money, and you get a few more cards and more information. In other words, new product projects, you never bet all the money at the beginning. It's a stepwise process. It's an incremental commitment. As you learn more, you bet more.
That's crucial. With new product development, with innovator products, you never bet all the money in the beginning. You would be insane if you did that, because you have no information. You have to buy information with minimal viable products. Learn. Just the smallest amount of money, how much can you learn? And then when you learn when something makes sense, or when something didn't make sense, it should go to the next stage, and then the budgets get bigger. This is how the entire startup ecosystem works. The startups go through various stages: self-funded, angel-funded, VC-funded, institutional investors. The further they get, the bigger the budgets become, but they leave many competitors behind who are unable to prove their assumptions. So I was treating it as a pipeline of innovation, but that was wrong. It is a funnel. Lots of ideas start at the beginning and only a few remain. Robert Cooper says in his work, he measured it, that it is an attrition rate from 60 to 1. That means 60 ideas in the idea box, one is going to be a winning, profitable product. Now you try to predict which one. You can't. It's impossible. So you can also draw it like this, as a mountain that you're climbing together, or as levels in the game. Game of Thrones, same thing. First season, lots of families vying for the Iron Throne. And season by season, more and more are killed off. And the budgets get bigger and bigger, the stakes get higher the further they get, with fewer and fewer candidates remaining. I have another metaphor, this one.
Upside, inside out, she's living la vida loca. She'll push and pull you down.
It sounded like 2 3-year-olds who've got flu trying to sing.
I love Simon Cowell's insults. He's so much better at it than I am. But this is like Innovation Committee 3.0. They have no idea who is going to win at the end. They don't have to predict at the start when they have 10,000 candidates. They say just show what you can do, and after the first round we're going to kill half of you. And the other half you move on to the next stage, and the budgets get bigger, and you get more time, and then you do it again, and you get, the further you get, the better you become, with coaches and everything. And by the time you get to the end, just a few are remaining, you just know for sure that they will be really, really good. It's just impossible to predict which ones those will be. So, the third key to solving the innovator's dilemma is to create some kind of innovation funnel. What is the great game of business that you're playing as a company? It is not enough to just have a hackathon. When after the hackathon nobody knows what is the next stage for the ideas, then you might as well not organize a hackathon. You should somehow have a defined stage-by-stage approach, like the startup world works. Like, okay, the best ideas from the hackathon, they get this budget in the next stage, and then those will have to compete with each other for the next stage, and the budgets get even bigger. And the company has to set aside money for that innovation fund. How much is the company investing in that for real? So, how can we have a startup culture, but we don't want to lose our scale-up culture? That's how I started. Well, I'm still working on this picture. I apologize for it looking complicated. Okay, I'm still improving it. But the concepts are all there. We have an innovation funnel. I like drawing it bottom up because it's like a game that we play with levels to achieve, and more are killed off. In the beginning, you have a few entrepreneurs, a few founders, a few employees with innovative ideas, but the further they get, the bigger the teams become, and by the time they're here, they should be profitable products. But only a few remain out of the many, many, many that will start here. The company needs to define somehow this, how this works. And over here, here you have the innovation committees. They decide who gets to pass, who gets the green light, who gets the red light. That's how people play poker. That's how investors treat startups. And the innovation vortex is always spinning, always. Only you focus on exploration more here, and over there you focus more on execution. But innovation never stops. It's just the nature of it changes over time. Like the way you learn as a human being changes from when you were a baby until the day you die, but you're always learning somehow. It's just the kind of learning adapts. So What about all those frameworks and methods and tools? I love them for what they contribute. Lots of good toolboxes with good ideas, but none of them solve the innovator's dilemma. And I'm trying to figure out how to move beyond that. How can we adapt those ideas? Because we need to introduce those concepts of life cycle stages. I'm not having any original ideas here. Everything is already out there. It's just dispersed in lots of different books and sources. 3 of my favorite ones are Eric Ries, The Startup Way, Robert Cooper's book, Winning in New Products, and Esther Hans and Tendai Vicky, The Corporate Startup. Lots of cool stuff there, but they all have like pieces of the puzzle, and I'm trying to glue them together to see the whole picture. A product like an organism. An organization is like a species, and the whole economy is like a biosphere where all those organizations compete and collaborate. But remember that the organization is not just one product. It should be a family of products that start up, scale up, and screw up at some point. So the only way to be disrupted, and not to be disrupted, I mean, is to disrupt yourself, like Apple does and many similar companies out there. So go forth and make more babies, startups, I mean, sorry. And for those in the audience, I have a special offer of the book, my Startup Scale Up Screw Up book. Take a picture of the QR code if you want 25% discount for anyone who wants to have a copy. And I will sell you a sticker with your name, send you a sticker with your name on it as well, so it will be signed. And if you want to have these downloads, the Vortex or the Tag Cloud or whatever, I have a bunch of downloads. Take a picture of this QR code, this URL. You sign up to the program because I'm trying to solve this problem with other people. How can we adapt those frameworks and methods to introduce a life cycle thinking and solving the innovator's dilemma? So thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you're going to enjoy 2 wonderful days and win lots of free books with green sticky notes. So, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much. In the name of all Budapest baristas, I just would like to apologize for your experience with cafe latte.
Oh yeah, that was.
I saw that was deep.
That was a traumatic experience.
I could see that.
Yes.
We are just so sorry. In the name of Budapest, really. Perezi has a barista, so if you visit us, we are happy to have your back on that.
A real cafe latte.
Let's see the questions, actually. Okay. I love that it popped up who the person in black and white was, but now it's up because you answered that question. And I think the most important that came up, what as a leader can I do to help innovation?
Mm-hmm. Well, I gave you the 3 keys. I think you should start with thinking about that process. What kind of stages are we going to define? Because just organizing a hackathon and not thinking about what happens after, I think that's a rather useless exercise. You will demotivate people if there is only a hackathon and then nothing else. It's a nice starting point. Actually, a better starting point was kicking people out of the office and tell them you're going to do some ethnographic research. Just watch what customers experience, what their behaviors is. But yeah, define those stages of investment and set aside money, because without money, without budgets for innovation, nothing's going to happen.
And can you give us a real-life example on a successfully working innovation center?
Oh, well, I am not working at innovation centers myself. The books that I mentioned are full of examples at General Electric or Procter & Gamble. Eric Ries has great examples in his book. Tendai Vicky has great examples of his book. I have my own companies to worry about. So that's hard enough already to get them up and running and surviving. So yeah, I suggest to check out those books. Yeah.
And how can you tell the actual stage of the product in that 10 scale?
Good question. I have one of the downloads is a list of questions that I offer to people, because like with human life cycle stages, it's not a binary decision. Like, it's not like you become a teenager from one day to the other. Right. It's a gradual aspect. And I could even say, when I was 15 years old, in some ways I was a teenager, in a few ways I was still a kid, and in a few ways I was an adult. And it's the same for products and services. Like, most of the product is probably in this stage, but they show some sign of being a bit ahead, and they show some sign of being still there. So some questions to ask is, are you profitable or not? Do you have, what's the retention and churn of customers using your product? There are dozens of such questions to ask yourself. And then it's quite often pretty obvious where the main bulk of the product is in which life cycle stage. So I have a download for that for those interested.
And I believe the next question is also going to be a little bit about, like, when do you know when to scale up? I believe that's a very complex thing to think about.
Yeah, it is. So I learned that usually the startups scale up too soon, rarely too late. So you have to worry about not doing it too fast, but you should not delay when, as soon as you can scale, you should, of course, because the problem is once you've figured out product market fit, you have proven that a product works, you will have competitors. Mm-hmm. Competitors see what is working, and then they're going to do same thing, only cheaper.
Oh yeah.
Because they did not have that entire history that you had to invest in. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you have to do things as fast as possible. But as I said, the plane has to be completed before you take off. I mean, maybe some things can still be a bit buggy, but the main thing has to work. Customer service needs to work, quality assurance needs to work. All those things in the back, integration with financial systems, the basics need to work before taking off and trying to accelerate. Otherwise, the whole thing will fly apart, and that's what some startups have suffered from.
Oh yes, that's true.
Yeah.
At which life cycle stage is it too late to fail when you cannot start over again?
Oh. Well, that's I love the analogy with the human life cycle. So you can start creating offspring when you're a teenager. So also for products and services, stage 6, when you're accelerating, it is possible to reinvest money in new products and services, but not advised usually, because you need the money just to grow up. Like teenagers need their income just to pay for themselves. I advised against having kids around that age. But the next stage, stage 7, by then you're profitable. That is the optimal stage to start investing in younger products and services. Then you should, like Spotify does and Tesla does, they invest in newer ideas that start from scratch. By the time you get to stage 9, it's too late. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because stage 7 and 8 are the profitable stages when you earn buckets full of money. That money you need to reinvest. By the time you get to stage 9, it is downhill. The product is just costing you money again, probably. Like senior citizens, the elderly, they will not generate new kids anymore by that time, usually. That's not advised either. Yeah, exactly.
We have time for one more question.
All
How
right.
do I actually fix my failed agile transformation?
All right, well, I hoped that my entire presentation would contribute to that, because the problem is that many coaches and consultants go in with a big framework or method and try to teach everyone this framework or method, but that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. You have to first identify which part of the business are in which life cycle stage. I think that's the first thing to realize. We have 2, 3, or 4 different business models, different products and services. We're going to treat them differently. Like identifying the family members. And then per family member, you should have an approach and say, well, this one is a kid. I'm going to have an entirely different program for the kids than I have for the adults and then I have for the senior citizens. And there could even be some parts of the company that are old, like in stage 9, you say, I'm not even going to touch them. I'm just going to love them for how old they became. And like, okay, you deserve thumbs up for surviving for so long. Thank you for helping this company be where they are. We're not even going to try and change them. I'm not even going to try and change my parents. Like, why bother? I will focus on the kids, because they will be the young generation. They will take over from me. So you should have that approach per business unit, I think, and not mandate a framework across everyone, because that's going to fail.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the audience for bringing all these great questions in. Many of them weren't asked, but you have the whole day to find the speakers and talk to them directly. And just with a little something, we just would like to say thank you for coming to Stretch.
Thank you so much.
This year. And also, sorry about the mic. That mic is going to be changed. So that had a little bit of problems, but they weren't.
I'm happy to be the guinea pig for testing. Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you too.
Thank you.